Thank, thank you, Carly. It's kind of a pleasure to be here to present what we have been doing. It's also kind of a challenge because I think I know every one of you except one or two persons. So I hope that in the next 30 minutes we can teach or provide some information that is useful for everyone. And the other reason I'm very happy to be here with Robert is that the word ecosystem is becoming almost mainstream. We see that there's these changes of structure at trust over IP. And as many of you know, we have been using this word ecosystem for a while. As the people that we have been working with, you also know that we have been doing quite a few things, and we're always saying Human Colossus Foundation has three pillars. This distributed governance, decentralized semantic, and decentralized authentication. Yeah, that's very nice. And if you go into it, you realize it's very complex. So here we're going to give you not a technical talk. We're going to move around and basically explain to you in about 30 minutes what is the Human Colossus Foundation, how we organize, what we do, and why we are basically super organized actually to be in the place where we are. It's at least building the tooling to create ecosystems. So this is more history of the foundation, through which we will obviously touch a number of specific points. So you're welcome also to jump into it. And we will have a Q&A session at the end so that we can go on a very specific question. So I will start with the organizational aspect. And then we will move to Robert will provide actually the details about the history of the foundation. And
Philippe, are you sharing your screen yet?
no, I will share my screen.
Okay.
I will also, I was about to say I'm going to share my screen. So I'm sharing my screen now. And I also announced that we will not share the presentation because the presentation is directly from the Human Colossus website. So the presentation is something that's also a message we wanted to pass. We are now in a position where these three pillars I mentioned before are getting into action together. So we are spending a bit more time also making what we do more transparent to a wider audience. As you will see, we are not a huge foundation, so be patient. The website is not going to be updated from one day to the other with a highly change, but we are doing step by step. And today, actually, we will go only to two aspects of the website we have recently updated: the About Us, which is about the foundation we created, the organization, and then Robert will actually speak about the achievements. So if you want to follow, you can go directly also on the website where you see what we have. So the mission of the foundation, maybe an important news. We stated it 5 years ago. We haven't changed it. Obviously, we have learned a lot. We have adapted it, but the mission remains the same. We didn't have to touch it. So how did we capture that? We created, actually, the entity is a Swiss-based foundation. That means we are registered here in Switzerland, Geneva. Why we chose Geneva is basically also with the proximity of the humanitarian sectors, because that was a big important fact to understand this distributed and decentralization aspect we wanted to bring. And we have this global reach. The mission has always been to drive the creation, adoption, and evolution of the dynamic data economy. And this is where we have the trick. We evolve what we mean by dynamic data economy, but we are really here to promote the protocol, define, do the research that is needed. The foundation does not build a solution, an IT solution itself. We create the basis upon which all this can be done. And this is why the whole setup is really designed as a non-profit, which basically limits what we can do. And all this is actually notarized into the article of association. There's a link behind that. And it's the only text that we managed to get in French and English together. So the article of association describes really a full-fledged Swiss-based foundation that has the governance to actually have the stability and immutability. The foundation was created by Paul Knowles, Robert Mitwicki, and myself. So the three co-founders of the foundation are clear. We initiated as we are the board members to set up the things. And the plan is obviously to grow this entity as we go along. Now, the entity as of today, and as also was planned initially, is a standard foundation that is governed by the board. But we also, to respect these three pillars, we have also created a structure that facilitates this creation. We have set up a few councils. Actually, the three active councils are the Research Council, the Advisory Council, and the Technology Council. The Research Council is where we actually try to develop to make the research that is needed outside of the technology. That means the research that is needed to take a societal problem and translate it to this new technology of dynamic data economy that we bring. And we're going to say a few words about dynamic data economy as we go along and as we build the achievements. That's going to become kind of clear. So in the Research Council, which below you have a small description, and you have access also to the charter, which formally describe how the Research Council is organized. It's really the link with the academia, the link with problem owner. That's where we have, for example, links with the United Nations Development Program. We took a mandate there, an expert mandate on digital identity, but it's more on the research aspect. We don't develop things there. We give some courses at the University of Geneva. That's also part of that. That's the mission that we have there. The Advisory Council is more the place where we have actually people that wants to use dynamic data economy solutions. So it's only more how to you have already chosen basically to go to these decentralized technologies. So this is the place where things are being nurtured. We have been running the decentralized semantic working group into that advisory councils, and there will be some changes that will be announced, I think, in our annual meetings that takes place later this month. There will be some announcement on that. And then we have the Technology Council, and at this point I will hand over to Robert for the definition of the Technology Council, and he will move more to the timeline. But before I do that, Robert, I just want to give also a short introduction about the control structure we have into the foundation, which you see here in gray. In gray, you have we have an executive council, which is at this stage is mainly the head of the councils that is meeting. We are, for the moment, the head of the councils. But the steerco is basically to make sure that every pieces is working together, and also the relationship with our external controls. We are under the surveillance authority of the Federal Surveillance Authority, because even if we are based in Geneva, we have an international reach. And we have external auditors, an external legal counsel, and actually we ended up with 2 external accountants for some reason. Now, all this creates basically a setup that that is developing an entity that is independent of the co-founders, so that what is being done at the foundation stays in the foundation. And we are actively, Robert and myself, actively moving out of the board duties to take more the executive duties into the various councils. So the board is actually more like the incubation board. We have a plan to grow the board within the next few years to 6 persons to cover the scope of the things that are being developed. And that basically gives also a structure where we can basically split our activities into sets. On the left, we have this thing that is related to the understanding of digital transformation. That's the Research Council, and that also deals with the development of some projects that are then maybe taken by the next step, which if you have good ideas on the left side, you want to implement that. And this is what we call the HCF programs. It's really taking the concepts we have and implementing them into real project. I will not go in details right now because we prefer to, instead of telling you what we want to do, to the timeline of what we did, so you will see what we actually did in the past to reach the status where we are right now. So I think I will end my part here and hand over to you, Robert. I don't know if you want, shall I leave you the screen or do you want me to?
Yeah, you can leave the screen for now, and then you can switch to the timeline right away. So welcome everyone. Thank you very much for having us here today. My name is Robert Mitwicki. I'm the head of the Technology Council, and as Philip already mentioned, co-founder of the Human Colossus Foundation. Briefly about the Technology Council, it's a council which is responsible to actually execute and implement all the aspects of the dynamic data economy. And this is as well something which I think is worth to highlight here, is that the Human Colossus itself is the ecosystem on its own. The plan is to create this ecosystem in the scope of the dynamic data economy, where obviously the Human Colossus as a non-profit foundation is responsible for making sure that the base protocols of the dynamic data economy are accessible to everyone, and as well assure about sustainable development of those protocols. And not only protocols, because obviously there is a lot of different work which we are doing, which I'm happy to introduce you what we have achieved so far and where we're heading with that. So the foundation was started or registered in 2020. So this year is our 50th anniversary. Since then, we were involved in various projects. Just to highlight briefly a few interesting one. One of the first projects which we started was the digital immunization passport. We wanted to show how to leverage decentralized technology to secure sensitive information in the healthcare system. This was actually pre-COVID situation where we deal with the yellow fever, an example. Basically, that was the first journey with the implementation of OCA and the carry protocols, where we didn't have that yet back then. So we actually started figuring out how this technology can help. And obviously the assumption was to build that solution which is independent of the networks or any blockchains and so on. So project was very successful. We delivered it in time. After that, we started spreading the information, spreading those technologies to different communities. One of this result was actually becoming a founding member of the Trust of IP, where we started organizing semantic working groups, where at the beginning the work on the OCA continued from Hyperledger ecosystem, where we actually started that as the first time this technology was introduced through the IIW initiatives, IIW event, and then we actually participated in the Hyperledger ecosystem, where we incubated some of those stuff and then move towards Trust over IP with the development. Then in the meantime, we took a step further, where we started combining not only the authentication with the small amount of the information, but as well a bigger chunks of the data. Generally, topic which we try to address with the next generation internet grant was through the creation of the discoverability mechanism for the distributed data ecosystems. The project was called Dynamic Data Sharing Engine. That was the initiation of the work to figure it out how information can be accessed on demand instead of actually spreading the information across the different places. And that was the prerequisites or actually starting work, which we later on continue with University of Guelph, which we partnered in the context of the project of Agri-Food Data Canada, where we leverage that technologies and learnings from the previous projects to actually start implementing something tangible. Further development led us towards solutions related with authentication protocols, specifically carry. We tried to educate and show proof of concept of these protocols already for the SSI community. This led us to another NGI project, which was called DKMS for SSI. In here, we built a base technology which is supposed to provide a decentralized key management system for any identification system. And that was just a POC. That was just a proof of concept showing that actually it's possible to do it that way. And through that, we continue developing it. And now, and if there will be enough time, I can even show you how that already works. And we'll explain as well in other projects how we're using it. Through our activities, we participated in SNV, which is a standard organization in Switzerland, towards the working groups in the Senselec, in the different working groups to promote decentralized technologies, especially in the context of the decentralized identity management system. This is, again, a part of the educational part of the Human Colossus to evangelize about an alternative approach towards those problems. Further on, we finally released the Overlays Capture Architecture version 1, which was a stable specification for semantic layer within our dynamic data economy. That allowed us to start actually building products, which some companies already adopted. And based on those learnings, we are preparing right now to the version 2, where there is active work done as we speak. Around 2023, we launched or published first paper about distributed governance, so the third pillar of our dynamic data economy, showing the conceptual model of how the distributed governance can be implemented, or how it should be shaped through the connection between the human accountability and the technological stack, which we developed for exactly that purpose. As Philip mentioned, we had as well some collaboration with the University of Geneva, where we actually did some lectures about those topics. We're trying to get this information spread not only within the, let's call it, IT ecosystem, but as well through a different research institutes, legal partners, legal ecosystems, where we're trying to combine all the knowledge and efforts to explain that there is a new revolution coming, which will completely change the way how we think about the data and the digital spaces. And we're trying to as well get as much experience of those people into this work to make sure that we'll cover all the necessary problem. Big project in 2024 started through our efforts with our partners. It is called NextGen. It is a project under European Horizon, where we have 21 organizations, 8 research institutes. Yes, so that's the website. Obviously, you can read through the details about all those projects, clicking on each of individual achievement. NextGen is very specific. It's an ecosystem on its own for improving cardiovascular treatment for the cardiovascular diseases, leveraging genomic data and combining that with the patient's data. We are providing a whole infrastructure, so trying to create this dynamic data economy in a production environment. Here, a very specific environment is consisting of cross-jurisdictional institutions from US, UK, and countries in Europe. We trying to show how the information can be accessed, exchanged, and identify or discoverable within a decentralized ecosystem. There is as well a lot of aspects related with the federated learning within that project, where obviously AI models helping to analyze the treatment, but obviously feeding the data into the AI is a little bit challenging making sure that the provenance of the information is assured, and as well the authenticity of that information from the perspective of what is allowed to use, if we have a consent of patients, if the ethical committee agreed to use those information, or simply from the perspective of the jurisdiction, if we are allowed to use that information for that specific purpose. So we have a bunch of biobanks which are sources of those informations, and we showing how this information can flow through the whole ecosystem.
Robert, there is a question
Yes.
from
Yeah,
Robert?
please.
Yeah, thanks. So, in terms of governance, because one of the topic is the distributed governance, and in this use case, for example, the next gen, how does the Human Colossus Foundation? So, what is the contribution of your technology or your approach to distributed governance? Because that's this working group this year merged with the governance stack, and it's ecosystem and governance, and those two concepts are really powerful together. So just wondering how Human Colossus approaches distributed governance for this project, for example.
Yeah, so we could have another hour to speak about that, I think, because there's so many things to share there. But maybe, Philip, if you want to briefly provide it, since you...
Because of the audience, I mean, the place where we have this talk, I think I will maybe let you finish, because you need also to speak about DKMS, and then I'll wrap it up together, because the reason we went into this, it was really a very, very heavy lifting to get this next-gen project running. The reason we spent energy doing that, it's because we could manage the whole life cycle from the data, from the governance down to the utilization. So I think it's important that you also hear Robert on the DKMS, then you have the whole picture, OCA, distributed governance.
Okay.
And that can open the discussion for the next.
Okay.
So Philip already mentioned we are part of the UNDP Advisory Board for Legal Digital Identity Framework. We as well recently joined AI for Developing Countries initiative run by UN as well, to basically introduce the concepts which we are discussing here about from the perspective of the governance of the artificial intelligence, as you can't speak about the governance of those things without having governance of the data. And this is information. This is activity which is necessary from the perspective of pretty much any ecosystem where the governance of the data is the key aspects to actually build anything in a digital space. Further down the line, OCA was used as one of the components for verifiable credential presentation by the Swiss EID project. Swiss EID project is basically a national initiative in Switzerland which aim to introduce a national digital identity based on the decentralized technologies, and OCA was used as a presentation layer to secure the presentation layer, to secure semantic of the credentials which are issued within the scope of Swiss EID, which have this funny names SWIU. You can read about the etymology of that on their website. It's currently in progress. I think they are planning to deliver it by the 2026. So it's currently in the public beta. There's a lot of interesting materials published by them. The whole project is overall open source. So there's a lot of materials available. So for those who are interested, I will highly recommend to take a look on that. And finally, the recent achievement is the publication of the DKMS, so Decentralized Key Management System, which is fully based on Carry protocol. We launched this website to collect information about what it is, how it works. We're trying to hide the complexity of the technology for those who are planning to consume it. This is why we chose that name as a part of the simple infrastructure. Currently, it is available in the form of simple Docker containers, which you can bootstrap on your laptop. And if we'll have enough time, I can even show you how it functions. The implementation details and the libraries are described on that website. Everything what we are doing as our core protocols is developed in Rust. with the binding to different languages. Currently mainly JavaScript and some of the Python, but due to the capacity, we are currently focusing on stabilizing the core components. And together with the OCA, DKMS plays two main pillars within our accurate data pyramid, which address the integrity, so the objectual integrity, assuring about the integrity of the semantic, and DKMS assures about authenticity and making sure that we are able to verify any information within the ecosystem. And if it's a decentralized, federated, or centralized, it doesn't matter because the protocols allows you to build it up. Those are the most visible work which we have done so far. We are working as well in between on a various different concepts. For example, one of them which worth to share here is a digital self. Digital self is the initiatives to figure it out how we can create a user interface for the individuals and entities to operate within digital ecosystem with assumption of this self-sovereign approach from the perspective of the controlling mechanism and being able to operate in the scope of the digital verification, validation, signatures, different activities. This actually goes towards the concept as well of exposing digital services through something which we call FAT protocol. This is a concept which goes towards encapsulating a business logic within the protocol instead of the application. Some of the example, very famous one is like SMTP, so the email protocol. This is why email is so widely accepted and works pretty much anywhere, and you can exchange information. Versus, for example, WhatsApp, where message to the WhatsApp can be sent from the WhatsApp only app, right? And the same with the services. And those initiatives from the perspective of the digital self FAT protocols, it goes towards a complete picture of the dynamic data economy, so the ecosystem which we are trying to create, which goes as well into economical models. I will not spend too much time on this one, but generally, I think the most interesting aspects what we are trying to achieve with that is to change the way how people are monetizing the data nowadays. So instead of monetizing the data, we're trying to showcase how we can monetize the data flow. And this basically change the rules of the game, let's put it that way, which allows to create a completely new type of the business models and completely new approaches towards building digital ecosystems. That avoids as well monopolistic approaches and platforms and different silos which are currently built. So quite often we are referring to our approach as a platform-less or network-less, because there is no need to have the network or the platform to which everyone needs to be connected, and it still will work. And I will just finish with the consequences of that. We are preparing for since quite some time already, but this is a part of our journey. We are preparing to launch something which is called Colossi Network. Colossi Network is basically a commercial companies around the human colossus ecosystem or dynamic data economy ecosystem, which participating within that ecosystem and benefiting, leveraging the knowledge and experience of Human Colossus Foundation to build businesses around it. Through this Colossi Network, companies get access to the knowledge, tooling, sandboxes, and as well expertise, which is within the Human Colossus. And through that, we are trying to, first of all, promote what we are doing, showcasing people and shortening the time to the market, making sure that people will address those problems in a proper way and not spend time on the dead ends with technologies which not necessarily are meant to solve a specific problems. So I will stop here. And yeah, if there are any questions, happy to take. And Philippe, if you could just summarize NextGen as an example and explain a little bit how we are doing that stuff there.
Yeah.
Was there any question? Because I heard something, but I'm not sure if...
No, I think it'd be good to see it in action.
Yeah.
See that.
Of course.
So to see it in actions, I think I will stop sharing this screen. So we will go quickly through exactly what we do in NextGen. I will go relatively fast, so maybe it gives 5-10 minutes to Robert to show some real action into a demo of DKMS, which is basically one of the really new and exciting things that is taking place here. So I will share with you something that will be a public document soon. This is our first deliverable for the NextGen project. Well, no, second deliverable that we actually did into the NextGen project is about the mechanism for information discovery in the ecosystem we are creating there. And that should answer your question, Eric, because for that to work, you need OCA, you need DKMS, you need everything, and you need this notion of distributed governance, which starts basically as a certain approach to governance, recognizing that an ecosystem has a certain governance and is constantly interacting with other ecosystems that have their governance. For us, in the paper, when we set the stage, we define we have a definition of ecosystem that we can build on. For us, an ecosystem is something that has a legitimate authority, a governance authority that is the administration that makes this legitimate authority actionable. You have the president and then the Congress and and then you have the population. These three aspects, and the populations are basically all the actors. And in the paper we call them autonomous principle. It's a very strange name, but they are principle in the sense of the agent principle. They are the one giving the order to the system, or they have an agency, and they're autonomous. They have free will. Just to make sure that we don't mix yet at this stage with AI or agent. So basically, these are the humans. The population are the humans, but the model can be extended, obviously, to organization, where you are actually, as a registered organization, you have also a certain liberty of action. So this is basically inspired by work done on the legal side, where they use the concept of privacy sphere that is extended to contract law. So there's a bit of a legal background to why we use these three definitions. That's a vision of how the distribution takes place. So what is NextGen? What was the challenge in NextGen, and why the EU actually funded a project for that? The problem they are tackling is the mix of genomic data with non-genomic data, because to actually make some research on having some clinical impact, having the genome is not enough. You need to know what they call the phenotype and the things around the patient. So this is when you call the thing that is called personalized medicine is actually that, taking your personal data with your phenotype or your genome, and then you put things together, and then you get this magic of having this personalized treatment and a lot of things. But from a data perspective, this is a no-go, because genomic data is already ultra sensitive, and if you put that with behavioral data, you have a super mix of very sensitive data. So it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to do that locally. So when you touch a scientific project that has a different jurisdiction, it's basically impossible to do anything because they can't exchange data. So the whole call is about the integration of genomic and other data across jurisdiction. And what you see in the picture here, it's a little bit, so it's a bit small. I don't think I can make it bigger. But that's basically representing the core of, or the end result of the NextGen project. Are we able to exchange data to perform research? Here, there's 5 research organizations. One is in Finland, one is in Netherlands, one in Sweden, one in the United States, and 2 in the United States. So that was chosen actually voluntarily to make the thing. There's no way to do that on a platform. There's no platform that will host data from Europe, medical data from Europe on the US, because simply you are not allowed to. So this is where we came up with the idea that, well, we can actually implement the whole DD here, because you have to solve 2 problems. You really need to have a totally decentralized authentication that is highly flexible and that is not centralized on a root of trust that is somewhere, because there will be no place to have that somewhere. You need to have really peer-to-peer interaction that can take place. You need to have a certain governance for the whole ecosystem. So DKMS here is absolutely essential, and that's Robert will show you where we are in a few minutes. That's the essential for the governance to provide the authenticity layer. And the authenticity layer is basically the second layer into the pyramid. The first layer is the integrity. And we could have basically the same project just dealing with the integrity, because when you have so many different organizations, you have a big data harmonization problem. None of these organizations are actually using the exact same standard. Maybe they do in that specific vertical or specific research product they are doing, but as soon as you ingest into this genomic data, which are pretty well standardized, you ingest phenotypes that comes from patient data, and then you have the whole mess. Nothing is harmonized, and there is no big structure. There are many standards touching that. So even searching the information becomes hard, because you will not call the same disease into each of these locations the same way. And this is where OCA is essential. So this is where the three things were needed. You needed the integrity layers. That's why we need the OCA architecture. We need the authenticity layers to be decentralized, the KMS or the ambient infrastructure. And the whole thing is governed with this distributed governance. What you see in this screen is actually how does it work into a specific case. We were asked to build a catalog. A catalog is something simple. We have a researcher that simply wants to search the ecosystem of NextGen, which patient is actually having this type of specificity, so I can use my specific analysis. So initially, people thought that the catalog is something that is centralized somewhere, and we have metadata and standard catalogs. And no, impossible, because some of the data you want to search is already, you have to be able to search granularly in some details, and you know that you cannot share that data under normal concept. You need to have specific agreement to do that. So this is why the decentralized structure we defined there works, because the data stays completely under the control of each of the location. OCA has this separation of the schema and the data. So that means you first search on the schema. If there's something sensitive, then you get the consent management that can kick in. But this is driven locally. Every node is local. And every node basically can search every other node. So you get a replication. Each node will be likely like an organization. And this is just...
Is it possible, sorry, is it possible to zoom in just a little bit on maybe just one of those?
We can, yes, sorry about that. So the process, maybe the zoom in will be, it's easy to understand the process. Here, UMCU is the coordinator of the project, the University Medical Center in Utrecht. The idea is whatever, we represent here whatever interface could be. We don't care about the interface. You make a search. The search goes to a service that is hosted at a node that is attached under the full control of this organization. And the catalog is federated in the sense that it's going to basically search every other catalogs that are sitting in all the other nodes across the... Here you have, it's the centralization point is what you will call basically a governance centralization. This is where the ecosystem takes form, where we say, oh, these organizations are called next-gen organization because they respect this charter, because they have a certain definition they agree to. But it's not because we will have a next-gen common data model that every location has to apply it. They will know what is the common data model, and if they want to do variation, that will be their own responsibility. So this is why we have the color circle is basically what we call the data integration framework that identify all the modalities, all the data sources that these people have access to, the processes they are doing. This is very important to know once you have the data, what type of processes they are doing. So this is why we have this wheel, which represents the data integration framework with one of the services, which is the federated catalog. That's what we build for them. Other partners will build, for example, the federated machine learning, which is all about bringing the algorithm into these various places, keeping also privacy in. So Human Colossus is basically doing two things. We are what we call a work package lead. These projects are big, so they are really different work packages. Each work package is like a mini organization that is fully autonomous to do what they have to do. So we lead completely the data management piece. Another work package is the infrastructure, and this is something we wanted. You split basically the data management, the governance with the actual infrastructure, so that we can prove we are actually agnostic with the infrastructure in what we build. And we also have a role, not a leading role, but we are a co-participant into a work package that is only about regulation, ethics, and governance. And this will be the work package, basically, that is the legitimate authority that says, well, actually, in action, we do this, the governance measure. So we keep a foot on both sides, because obviously, currently, when you speak about governance measure, there will be agreement, there will be specific data sharing agreement, and we want to go beyond that. It's a research project. It's not, well, PCs gonna be used in production. But because it's a research project in healthcare, people who know healthcare will know that actually to go in the real production level, there's another 5 years of just certification and all this that will take place. But this project will allow us to develop at scale, because all these organizations are really big organizations that we will be able to showcase that. Now, maybe I will do another something bigger. Yeah. What's happening into one of these nodes where we see maybe what Robert will have a few minutes to demonstrate. These green pieces, this is what we build inside one of these nodes. One of these services is the catalog. For that, we have the OCA repository for all the semantics. Carl, it's very close to the semantic repository that was developed with you in Guelph. It's the main difference is that we have DKMS that is fully integrated with the whole pictures, and we have the data governance authority. So it's basically what we call the supporting infrastructure that is available across the whole ecosystem. And that feeds basically the other services of the information, not of the information, of the capacity to authenticate and verify the integrity of the data. All the intelligence is obviously into the use case, and we don't do that. So this document is currently under review by the EU Commission, so it's not public. So don't take too many screenshots and share it. But this is basically where we are.
Can I have just a quick question on that one? Sorry, Philippe, if you put that one back up.
Sure.
The governance, trying to understand if it is, so you're, in some senses, you're governing the data, but also governing who has access to that data? Meaning,
yes, clearly.
Yeah, and so is that, where does that broader governance framework sit in terms of who gets the access?
Here.
Okay, and then
maybe I can clarify something, because not exactly here, because that's the essence of the distributed governance. So obviously we have a governance for the whole consortium. So we're setting the rules, and this is where it's here. That's common rules for everyone within the consortium. So let's say we agree that we're doing this, this, and that. Now, each individual node is responsible to set their own rules, depending on their jurisdiction, depending on their conditions, depending on whatever constraints they have. That, for example, only those kind of people have access to only this specific data sets, right? Because we are speaking here about a genomic data, very sensitive information. Some of the information cannot leave the jurisdiction. So this is why I mentioned about this machine learning algorithm with the federated learning, that instead of moving the data, we're moving the model, right? But then to be able to move the model, you need to understand like what you guys have on your site, right? What you allow me to touch for that specific use case, right? So, and here you could have a various constraints, right? From ethical perspective, technical perspective, or even simply jurisdictional regulation in that specific, why you are using it, what is the purpose of that, what you are trying to do, right? So this is why this distributed governance allows us to keep everyone a control over their space and adhere to the rules of the consortium. And then obviously you can scale it down and up depending on the situation, means that the internally organization could have multiple levels of those governances, right? Because
Right.
obviously each department could have their own stuff, right?
So it's layered governance. So you have centralized governance
Correct.
with consortium, and then you have a layer of distributed or decentralized governance depending on. And what do you call those things? Are you calling those nodes?
Yeah, the
Yeah, I
node.
mean, in that case, it is node, but it's just
So it is basically
definition.
everything is an ecosystem in a sense. And what we just discussed now, it's basically represented here. You have the red. I don't think it's clearly visible. Some lines are red and some lines are black, because we wanted to showcase what we are creating is peer-to-peer connections between ecosystem. So Utrecht is an ecosystem. Karolinska is an ecosystem. They are free to do whatever they want together. But if they want to respect the governance of the next-gen ecosystem, well, they are aware of the law. So this is really the key point, that it's a peer-to-peer system. The distributed governance is basically about that. You are responsible for your ecosystem, whether it's you as an individual or you as an organization. So you are responsible, and you basically are deciding. You can have about, we call that legitimate exception. When suddenly the process tells you need to do that, but the context allows you actually to do something differently. You don't have to encode that into a business process. You, as the owner, you have the legitimacy, you have the liability if it goes wrong. And this is basically closer to a decision model that happens in enterprise. Most of the decision makers do not take that decision knowing exactly the policy and knowing exactly everything. That's why they usually are in their role. They have to balance the context. And this is represented in this fact that we have this centralized governance that's where sits maybe the charter, some of the general data. And that's where, for example, the ethics of NextGen can be discussed, because the ethics of NextGen, what type of research should be done, will be a consensus of the NextGen participant, not the minimum principle of the whole country. So these are the things that allows this type of flexibility. We are just providing the the infrastructure that allows this decision maker to verify the accuracy of the information they have. So in a sense, it's very limited, but that does not exist yet, because currently we are working in a platform world where basically the governance is captured.
Right. Okay, thank you. So the time check, 4 minutes. And Trin, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. I wonder, as part of the governance, what are the incentives for the participant to participate in this ecosystem? And is there any way to enforce how people buy with the rules that you mentioned?
So yeah, there are quite a few things. 4 minutes going to be the first. The simple thing, the onboarding. The notion of onboarding is like the notion whether you accept a member in your family or do you accept a member into an association. So yes, there is an onboarding, but it's not a login onboarding where you have to adhere to the whole. So it's more at the governance level that there is an onboarding. The technology allows you to be recognized. It's basically at the credential level. What we provide is basically the whole authentication system that will recognize, well, this guy has been recognized, authenticated, and he has received basically a vetting. This organization fulfill a certain number of criteria, which the ethics of NextGen will decide. So the onboarding is not a platform onboarding, and this will be, I'm not sure we'll be able to express so far in NextGen, because the governance people are a little bit, well, it's going to take time. So that's one piece of the question. Now the incentive, it's on the economics. And here there's a whole chapter behind. That's why we call it dynamic data economics. It's because the distributed governance embedded in this design, that why people are doing things because they have an incentive. There is a purpose. Each have a purpose. So distributed governance, it's also linked about that people have different purpose. Why do they do business together? It's because, well, each of them gets an advantage of the other. So the incentive in NextGen will be, for example, to be able to share less data, but that they're allowed so that they can actually do their research. The incentive will be to create, well, what we create first is this data discovery mechanism. What happened after the discovery depends on all. Now, for a catalog, this has the advantage of instant pushing your data to a catalog, and then you don't know what's happened. You are pushing your schema to the data. You say what you have, and then if someone wants it, but you want somehow to protect it because you don't want any other use, you can just have this red flag, or then ask me if you want it. So there's an more incentive for you to push stuff to the visibility of the community if you know that in the end, you decide whether or not you're going to share the data. So there's a number of places we have to look at that specifically. NextGen is a pure research project. We are making it for the researcher. We were very close. We don't go to the patient level. That's where the economics actually kicks in. But for the researcher, the incentive is to discover data, accurate data, and to make the data visible, but keep a certain control, especially for all this piece, which is not finalized in research project. You don't have everything that is always finalized. And yeah, the main incentive is to have more real-time data instead of data that is in the biobank since 10 years. That's one of the incentives to work on that.
And if I may, just to summarize that, within the scope of the dynamic data economy, the incentive is when the data flows, because then the value is generated. In case of researchers, they have more data to do better research in the context of the treatment, which helps to solve problems with the specific diseases, right? If we'll have an ecosystem where actually there are services and so on, the value of the data, the flow of the data will generate additional value for the participants of the ecosystem. And this value could be manifested in various different ways. It could be monetary value. It could be beneficial for the society, like solving a public transport issues in the city, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of, actually we could have a separate session on the economics of those stuff. But like I mentioned before, changing the way of thinking about monetization of the data versus monetization of the data flows opens up a completely new opportunities. And this is what this technology enables you to do.
And there's a very easy way to understand
I'd like to, we're at the end of our time. So first I'd like to close out the presentation and stop the recording. So thank you very much, Robert and Philippe, for the presentations today. And thank you everyone for joining us here at the Ecosystem and Governance Working Group. I'm going to stop the recording now, and then perhaps sometimes we have a discussion that continues afterwards, but this is the official closure of the meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.